Welcome to Swords and Hammers, where truth comes clothed in tales, and the soul remembers what the mind forgets. Settle in and listen well. The Endless Strip, a chronicle of domestic wilderness. Old Harlan built his cabin on the lip of the valley where the river ran lazy in summer and froze solid come January. He raised it beam by beam and built it larger than any bachelor had a right to, because he was the kind of fool who plans for happiness before he has secured a supply of it. The following spring, Harriet arrived. She had sharp, dark eyes that missed nothing, a laugh that could make a man feel elected to high office, and opinions on every subject God had invented, and several he had not gotten around to. Harlan loved her the way a man loves weather, completely, and with no expectation of controlling it. Their first year was the kind people lie about later. Harriet sang while she worked, old songs from her mother's kitchen, and the sound made Harlan's chest ache with a sweetness he had no vocabulary for. Those were the days when love was still a volunteer, before it got conscripted into daily service and started to resent the uniform. What happened next was not dramatic. That is what made it so dangerous. Nobody fires a cannon at a marriage. They just drip on it. It began with the boots. Harlan had a gift for tracking mud into the cabin, the way some men have a gift for music, naturally, abundantly, and without visible effort. Harriet mentioned it, then mentioned it again, then mentioned it in a tone suggesting the mud was evidence of a deep moral failing. A failing she had been too generous to name until now. The complaints found their groove. The fire was too low. They'd freeze. He stacked logs until it roared. Now it was an inferno. Was he smoking them out like badgers? They had entered an arms race of domestic dissatisfaction, and Harriet held the superior arsenal. But here is what nobody tells you about Harriet, because stories like this usually don't bother. She was afraid. Not of Harlan. The man couldn't intimidate a stray cat, but of the quiet. Her father had been a silent man who one Tuesday walked to the river and did not walk back. Silence to Harriet was not peace. It was the sound of someone leaving before they had gone. So she filled it with any words, because even an argument proved somebody was still in the room. Harlan understood none of this. When Harriet said, "That stew's bland as creek water," she meant, "I have been alone all day, and I am frightened you do not see me." What Harlan heard was a woman insulting a perfectly reasonable stew. He was not wrong about the stew. He was wrong about everything else. So he took to the barn, finding comfort in the company of their mule, who was a superior conversationalist, in that it never conversed at all. Harriet watched him go each evening from the window, telling herself she was angry. Anger was easier to carry than the truth, that she had driven away the one person she could not bear to lose, using the only weapon her fear could find. One evening, Harlan set down his spoon. "I believe I'll sleep on the roof tonight." Harriet stared at him, the way one stares at a man who has announced he'll baptize himself in the horse trough. "Harlan, you have lost your mind." "Might be," he said, and meant it more than she knew. He spread his blanket near the chimney, under a sky so thick with stars it looked like God had spilled his salt shaker. No commentary accompanied the wind. No critique of character rode on his back. He slept like the dead. If the dead got stiff necks and woke with a beetle in their ear, it was magnificent. The next morning brought breakfast. It was served in silence so hostile it had its own weather system. sleeping up there like some deranged raccoon. He chewed. What will the neighbors say? He swallowed. I expect they'll say I look well rested. The bowl she threw missed by a comfortable margin. Harriet had passion, but unreliable aim. The roof became his nightly sanctuary. Below, if he listened, and he tried not to, he could hear her. Not complaining. Something worse. Moving through the cabin alone, opening and closing things that didn't need it, making the small noises a person makes when quiet has become unbearable, and any sound proves you are still real. He heard this, and felt something twist in his ribs. But he didn't climb down. A man who cannot find the words will always find a ladder instead, and go the wrong direction on it. One blistering July, Harriet's voice hit like a branding iron. You've let the garden die. What kind of man watches his own crop wither? She was talking about the beans. She was also not talking about the beans. That night he packed bread, a water skin, his cloak, and a stubbornness so pure it could have been bottled and sold as medicine. He left no note. A note would have required him to explain what he was doing, and since he did not know, the page would have been unhelpfully blank. The desert leaned on him personally. His lips cracked, his water ran out. He found shade no wider than a coffin and crawled into it. A scorpion observed him with the calm appraisal of a creature that has never once been nagged. Fair enough, Harlan told it. Most productive conversation he'd had in months. But the desert does not comfort a man. It strips him. Takes away his barn, his mule, his roof, and leaves him with the one companion he has been running from, himself. Alone under that sky, his silence was not peaceful. It was loud with everything he had never said. Harlan did not become a new man. The desert does not manufacture saints. It only shows you the exact shape of the fool you already are. Harlan decided he was done running from a woman whose only crime was loving him badly because nobody had taught her to love him well. He also decided he was fairly certain one more day without water would kill him, and dying of stubbornness is only noble in songs. A traveler found him on the 9th day. Your wife searches for you, walked to 3 settlements, hasn't slept. Harriet, who could not let a crooked picture frame go unremarked, had left her cabin, her hearth, every dish she had ever complained about, and walked into the world to find him. Not with complaints, with her feet, which was the language she had been speaking all along. Presence. He had only ever heard the words. He walked home at dawn. The cabin appeared at dusk. Harriet was not at the door. She was on the roof, sitting on his blanket, in his spot, holding his book of Psalms to her chest. The way you hold something when you have confused it with a person. Harriet. Her face broke open, every defense falling like a dam, giving way not to force, but to exhaustion. She climbed down fast, missing the last rung entirely, and held him the way the desert holds rain, like something that has waited so long it no longer knows how to do anything but receive. Neither spoke. There was nothing to say that was not better said by the absence of distance. What followed took the better part of a year. Harriet learned that fear, dressed as criticism, is still fear, and a man told daily he is failing will eventually believe her and go. Harlan learned that silence is not an answer, but an absence shaped like one, and that a woman who cannot stop talking has often not yet been heard. They did not become perfect. They became bearable, which in a marriage is the higher achievement. Years on, a young husband came asking advice. His wife complained without ceasing. He was considering the barn. Harlan looked at him. "Son, I have slept on a roof and I have slept in a desert, and I can tell you that neither is as warm as a bed with a difficult woman who chose you on purpose." "Go home," Harriet said from her chair, "and when she starts in on you, don't fix the thing. Fix the look on her face. The thing was never the thing." He left bewildered, which is the correct state for receiving marriage advice. Contentions drip, and drips hollow stone. Any fool knows that. What the fools leave out is that mercy runs through the same channel, cuts deeper, and what it carves is not a ruin, but a river. Their cabin stood. Not because the beams were sound, but because two people stopped building walls against each other and started building doors and walking through them every single day, especially when it was easier not to. Especially then. Selah.